Hi there, it's Jonathan here. This is 2450 and we're reading the book of Genesis in 24 days. We're about to shift into the background story of the people of Israel, which is found in chapters 12 to 50. Today we're just in chapter 12. The Bible is a book which is made up of a collection of books. It's miraculous how the parts of the Bible link together to tell a cohesive story, especially when you consider its authors have made their contributions over more than 1,000 years. I mention all of this to lay a foundation for the fact that cultures over 1,500 or 2,000 years as a time frame are obviously vastly different. It would seem that God is interacting with humans in a way that is consistent with their capacity to understand the world at that time in history. For instance, the teachings of the Sermon on the Mount by Jesus are rather different to the teachings of the Ten Commandments, though you can clearly see the connection. One example is God's commands in Genesis 9:6. Whoever sheds human blood must basically lose their own blood. It all sounds rather barbaric and not very God-like. Yet this is God, and he is stooping down to connect with his creation in a manner that is understandable to them at this time in their human development. At times in Genesis, you scratch your head and wonder what on earth is going on. How can Abram give away his wife to Pharaoh in chapter 12 and have her taken as Pharaoh's wife? Not hard to read between the lines regarding what this means. It's just confusing. All we can say is that the times are barbaric, and yet within this, God is weaving his story of redemption. The story of redemption begins with chapter 12, verse 1. Abram is elected, chosen by God, seemingly randomly, but certainly in the wisdom of God. He is told to go. Sounds like the Great Commission of Matthew 28. Go. Most calls from God begin with some sort of go command. Normally we have to leave what is most comfortable to go into a space where we need to trust God more. 12:2-3 is a memory verse alert. Abram is given a massively important promise. God is going to give this man, who happens to have a barren wife, a promise that his descendants will be a great nation. God will give the great nation land to live in, which will be blessed. This is the promise that Abraham will be blessed to be a blessing. In fact, Abraham will be blessed so that every people group on earth would also be blessed. This is understood to be the origins of God's missionary call. The called are blessed so that the world would also be blessed and ultimately called through the message of the called, if that makes sense. 12:4, Abraham sets out. He is age 75. So he's promised an heir at age 75 but doesn't get one, we'll find out later, until he's 100 years old. Verse 7, the Lord said, I will give you this land. Remember the power of the words, and God said in Genesis 1. If his words can create worlds, then his words can be trusted. 12:10-20 introduces the warped behavior of this totally dysfunctional family. Ultimately, the family of Israel. We find Abraham, who at first sight looks like the model of faith and righteousness, showing himself to be very human, lacking in trust, faith, and chivalry. He puts his wife basically in harm's way. Now, God provides in the end for this rather poor individual with a small family and a big promise from God, but how it happens still raises eyebrows. This is the journey of faith, really for all of us. No one is righteous outside of Christ, and our walk of faith is complex and filled with right and wrong motivations. The good news is that even after his failures, Abraham still gets to be the father of the nations. Strap yourself in. Genesis 12-50 is a rather wild ride. Enjoy God's word.